the digital headlines were lured. I mean, it was all about how Meghan was a gold digger. It was all about the fact that she had photoshopped things at Reitman's to make sure she looked as though she had a smaller waist, bigger breasts. These super embarrassing clips on Pornhub. A scene from her in suits. Suspicious videos of her topless on a yacht. And there was this fabricated topless photo. It wasn't her, but still. It was her face, and so that's embarrassing. Good morning, how are you? Welcome to another episode of Revenge Review, where we're going through Tom Bower's Revenge as an answer to Spare. And in today's episode, we're going to talk all about Meghan and Harry coming out to the media as boyfriend and girlfriend. They wanted us to believe that the relationship was exposed way before they ever wanted anyone to know. But none of us believed that lie. And as Tom Bower goes on to explain, Meghan had been giving little hints, little details, little tiny bits of information on her Instagram and on her on the TIG, so that people knew that she was involved with somebody, but maybe not to what extent or to who. But she was over there playing all sorts of little titillating games. And what became one of the things that really stood out to me in this chapter when I was reading it was, when I had read Spare, I hadn't realized how quickly their relationship evolved into something that was exceedingly serious. And I totally understood why the royal family didn't want to come out and put out all of these royal statements and things like that, just because that's not what they do. But after reading how quickly Harry was asking that of them, I was even more shocked. I was even more shocked he would think he could ask his family to come out and make some huge statement about Meghan when he had literally been dating her for 5 months. Somehow that timeline had completely evaded me when I was reading Spare. I stood behind the royal family's desire to continue with never explain, never complain, because that's what they always do. But when I realized that one of the reasons they were feeling so reluctant to come out and make any statements was because Harry had only been dating her for 5 months, it was even more shocking to me that he would have asked that of his family. They don't know her, and quite frankly, neither do you. So for Harry to be in such a frothing rage about the fact that no one would stand up for Meghan, yeah, because she's a girl you're dating, and you can just let it lie. Just date the girl, okay? We don't need to come out and have, a big press conference about it. Have we ever had big press conferences about anybody else? And of course, Harry's reaction would be, nobody else has ever had such negative press coverage. I'd have done the same for any of the other girls. No, though. Because none of the other girls would have been pressuring you behind the scenes to do something about it. They would have been completely understanding of the snake pit that they crawled into when they chose to be with you. It's just a seething mass of lots of news coverage and lots of stories that may or may not be true, but you agree to that when you join the royal family. And I think that Harry would have been completely on board of just, not liking the coverage, but just going along with it if he had not had Meghan in his ear, crying and carrying on and saying that it was all this, you might not know it as racism, but it is racism. You might not realize they're being mean, but they are being mean. She had always her whole life wanted publicity, but it has to be on her terms. She had tried so hard her whole life to get her name in anything. Now her name is everywhere, but for all the wrong reasons. So you can imagine that her ego cannot handle it. So she, behind closed doors is probably raging at Harry. Do something about this. If you loved me, you'd do something about this. And that's why he's having to run on over to his family and being like, do something about this. He would not have expected anybody to make a statement had Meghan not been in his ear demanding that he do so. Anyway, today is all about their relationship being exposed. That's the name of the chapter, Exposed. And It's interesting to read Tom Bower's explanation of those early days in the relationship when you compare it to Harry's. Now, there is some overlap, more than I thought that there would be. But there's also a lot that went on that Harry told us, 1/8 of the real story. And so it's just like all these chapters have been, very revelatory about what in the world was actually happening. Okay. As always, if you are enjoying, please like, please subscribe, hit the bell for notifications. If you can, just hit the like button. That would be awesome. I guess the algorithm likes it. This is what people say. I don't know. I should probably spend more time looking at my analytics. But if you could do me the favor and hit that like button, that would be awesome. Now, Tom Bower starts his chapter out by stating the obvious. In Meghan Markle's life, little happened by chance. Don't we know it? He says that beyond the empathetic smiles was a woman who distrusted spontaneity and liked to control every aspect of her life. So it comes as no surprise that she scuttled on over to Sunshine Sachs and said, hey, could you guys do that thing that you always do where you get on somebody's Wikipedia page and change the info that is lame and embarrassing, because I'm in a very important relationship right now and I can't have this kind of stuff about me if people decide to Google me. Now, of course, she wouldn't have said who she was in a relationship with because nobody knew that right now. Maybe she revealed it to Sunshine Sachs, I doubt it. But she let them know things in her story needed to be adjusted. So on October 9th, a PR agency in Los Angeles, of course we know which one, changed her Wikipedia entry. Again, we know which one because that's what Sunshine Sachs does. They go and they clean up your dirt behind you. She wanted that reference to Deal or No Deal definitely taken off. Oof, how embarrassing. She did not want there to be any description of her carrying case number 24. God forbid somebody identify her. And they also deleted the fact that she had at one time been a fashion model. In its place, they included a section about her humanitarian work. She had to describe her time in Rwanda and Afghanistan and her New York speech for United Women's and the TIG. The TIG is humanitarian work? She listed that under humanitarian. Interesting. Because I couldn't have gotten along if I didn't know about that fluffy duvet. My humanity was in question until I got the right blankets. Then I was a human. Now, remember from last episode, Gina Nelthorpe-Cowan is all but out of the picture, but Meghan has a few last minute things she needs done. 2 weeks later, after having her Wikipedia page changed for the better, Meghan sent Gina an email announcing the end of her acting and commercial career. Their contract was terminated. Just letting you know, Gina, don't need you anymore. Bye, girl. Nelthorpe-Cowan was disappointed. I realized it meant losing her as a friend as well as a client. And why should it mean that? Why can't Meghan still be her friend? Because Meghan doesn't want to be friends anymore. Meghan's got no time for Gina. Meghan's timing had been carefully planned. Now that everything is in the works, now that she's definitely secured this situation with this boy, she's not going to be an actress anymore. Acting, commercial career, hardly. Harry was back in Toronto. On Saturday, 22nd October, Meghan took him to a Halloween party at Soho House. Now we remember this. Harry went dressed as Mad Max. It was like some kind of like the end of the world. That was the theme of the party, apocalypse. Meghan went in some, trashy Halloween outfit. And he was all excited because he could go and no one would know who he was. But most of the people felt that Meghan was like, this was her outing Harry, because there were people at the party who knew who had come, and they also knew that she was the one with him. So all of his begging her to keep things quiet, she couldn't wait to put out little details about what was going on between the two of them. She posted a photo of herself on Instagram with a pumpkin and a photo of her secret Halloween date. You guys, have you seen this picture? Isn't that creepy? What's going on with her hands? I don't know, like I looked at that picture for a while and I was just like, is this cute or just really, really whack? I'm going with whack. It's her hands for me that really freak me out in that picture. Like it really freaks me out. You could have just gone like that for Halloween. Anyway, Tom Bauer again says that most at the party were in no doubt that Meghan was outing Harry. For her own good reasons, Meghan wanted the relationship to be publicized. In media hype, some would call it the greatest story since the abdication. I would agree with that. I wasn't obviously alive during the time of the abdication, but I have to say that this story mirrors that in so many ways. And the only difference being that Harry had no throne to give up. But had he would have. Meghan and Harry went to this party, right? Now, Meghan did not herself say, I've gone with Prince Harry. But Kamala Tominey of the Sunday Express revealed the affair on 30 October, so right after the party. So, I mean, somebody at that party knew what was happening. Somehow this woman at the Sunday Express knew enough to let the world know that Meghan and Harry were together. Alerted from London, Harry left Meghan's Toronto home unseen early that morning and headed for the airport. And journalists began arriving at Meghan's house because the story definitely had the ring of truth to it. It became very evident that somebody knew something and somebody had tipped Tominey off about it. And there was a frenzy outside Meghan's house, probably the first frenzy that had ever been outside of her house. Not probably, absolutely. Finally, she was getting that paparazzi interaction that she had longed for so long. Meghan emerged smiling into a crowd of photographers and drove to this Suits studio. The thing is that, yeah, maybe she wasn't the one who broke the story, but all along, she's been also cutesy and titillating on her social media. She was always posting photos of herself on the TIG, and among those were shots of 2 visits to London, herself at Soho farmhouse in Oxfordshire, pictures showing that she and Harry were wearing identical bracelets, separate posts featuring a jigsaw and a cup of tea. Another showed 2 cuddling bananas with the caption, "Sleep tight, kisses." Journalists received numerous tips about the clothes and accessories that Meghan was wearing. 100,000 new followers signed up to her account. Princess Meghan Markle, asked one, which banana is Harry? Meghan was clearly not concerned about her privacy at that particular moment. 2 bananas? What is her obsession with bananas? In Los Angeles that morning, Nanaki Pretty, Meghan's oldest friend and maid of honor at a Jamaican wedding, and a victim of Meghan's ghosting, smiled. Meghan's long fascination with the royal family had landed her the ultimate prize. Nanaki had grown up obsessed with the royal family right alongside Meghan. She had seen this one coming. Not that anybody believed that Meghan was ever going to actually score this man that she had been longing to be with. Many of you mentioned, and I saw it the other day on GB News, Megyn Kelly came out and said that she had it on good authority that Meghan Markle had a dream board, of her with the royal family way back when she was married to Trevor. She had been plotting and planning this. I have no idea what her source is, but I would guarantee it's a good one. Because Megyn Kelly doesn't say things just out of the random blue. As a lawyer herself, she knows where she can and cannot speak. So, I mean, that's just confirmation of what we already knew. But Nanaki Pretty was not taken in by this coy little lie of, oh, I just stumbled ass backwards into the lap of a prince, Okay, well, the British media at this point was ecstatic because Harry seemed happier than he'd ever been, like for years. People felt sorry for him because it seemed like, next to William and Catherine's happiness, it was sad that Harry seemed to have no one. People loved this storyline. They also loved that she was an American, that she was different, that she had her own interesting background. I mean, up until a point, how people started investigating that background. But at first, it just seemed like she just seemed new, exciting, and different. And it's kind of like when there's a new kid in the classroom. Everybody wants to get the new kid's attention, And when you're the new kid, it's all exciting. Well, everybody at first was really excited about Meghan. They called her the feminist princess of our dreams. Buckingham Palace's website agreed. Meghan was proud to be a woman and a feminist. And the media instantly launched a hunt to find the truth about this little known actress because Well, they were really excited about her. You can only be, you can only say the same excited statements for so long. Then we got to get a little bit more about her. Let's keep the news cycle going. Let's find out more about where Meghan Markle came from. And the first reports were very positive. School teachers and old friends were more than happy to link themselves to Meghan's success. They said that she was awesome and that she always had been. They sang her praises. And Reitmans, they were thrilled to speak happily and openly about Meghan, because even though she'd been a complete and total nightmare, what are they gonna, slap away a potential princess? Yes, please, let's talk about how we were linked to her once. The news coincided with the launch of Meghan's collection, with Meghan's saying, Reitmans, really? Over and over and over on the TV, and then, oh, she's also with Prince Harry. Reitmans was more than happy to support Meghan. But one day later, the tone changed, because as people began to find out more and more about Meghan, people's antenna went up. Journalists called at her father's shabby Hollywood apartment. Standing at the open door, a pregnant woman explained that he was traveling in Mexico. I don't know who this pregnant woman was. She's just staying at his place. Thomas Markle is a question mark, I have to say. She told the media that there was no way of contacting him and that she never knew when he was going to come back. Well, this delighted Meghan. Thank God that her dad is somewhere where people can't find him. He's such a weirdo anyway. And she telephoned to Thomas Markle and told him, lay low. Do not come out of hiding. This is a happy time for me. So they're looking for you. Just don't say anything. Just gonna wreck this for me. Doria was under siege. And Meghan ordered Doria not to speak a word. Allegedly, there were some journalists who offered Doria money for an interview. And they tried to enter her home illegally. And they harassed her when she was walking out on the sidewalk. But she didn't say anything. And later they put some guards out in front of her house because she was being pestered so much. I remember Harry saying things sort of similarly and in this tenor. And I remember thinking, yeah, right. Now, some of the things that Harry said, I was like, he went overboard. He said that there were people following her on her job as a hospice nurse, looking in the windows of her hospice patients and climbing over the walls of the homes of her hospice patients. I remember at the time being like, oh, please, because he had that dumb line about how the last sound some of these patients heard was the click of a camera, just like Mummy. And I didn't have any patience for that. Well, the other thing that the newspapers were hammering on and on and on about was the fact that bankruptcy seemed to be a family trait. Everybody in the family was bankrupt. Thomas was bankrupt. Doria was bankrupt. Tom Jr. was bankrupt. Blah, 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 blah. This was humiliating for the family. But worse still was the fact that Meghan did not reach out to them and say anything to them about what to expect, or maybe even apologize to them for the fact that this was happening. Not that she could have done anything about it, because it's not her fault if journalists want to start digging. But maybe if she had just extended some sympathy to them for the plight that they were in. Because the thing is that she's famous enough that she can go in and hire somebody to rearrange her story online. She's got Sunshine Sachs doing her bidding, rewriting the narrative in case people want to Google her. But Thomas Markle, Doria, Tom Jr., Samantha Markle, they don't have the resources. Neither do they have the public profile to go in and change anything. What is. They can't hide the fact that they were bankrupt. They can't hide the fact that, there might be negative stories about them, or that they have, maybe gotten into some trouble, at some point in their past. And yes, of course, this is the price you pay when you make foolish decisions. But it's not the price anyone expects to pay. Nobody expects that their worst mistakes are going to be splashed all over the newspapers because you have a relative who's gotten in with some famous people. And I think that for Meghan not to at least extend a phone call and say, oh, this is so rough. I'm so sorry this is happening. Is there anything I can do? And genuinely mean it. But she didn't. And so that ignoring her family's pain and embarrassment made some of the family members, Samantha in particular, go on the defensive. Now, Samantha Markle was ferocious when it came to the media. She was not here to play games and to stand up for Meghan's, or to rewrite a narrative to fit Meghan's new station in life. Now later, Samantha would go out and say that she had been misquoted early on. I think that probably she was not. I think that what do we think about this behavior from Samantha? Well, let's read about it first and let's talk. Well, Samantha criticized Meghan for her lack of emotional and financial support towards their father since she had become a famous actor. And she told Harry, watch out. The royal family would be appalled by what Meghan's done to her own family. The truth would kill her relationship with Prince Harry. He wouldn't want to date her anymore because it puts her in a bad public light. And then, she said that Meghan was a pushy social climber. She said she was a social climber with a soft spot for gingers. And in The Sun, Samantha proclaimed that her behavior is certainly not befitting of a royal family member. Meghan, she said, is narcissistic and selfish, and that they had not seen each other since graduation in 2008. So it had been 8 years since Samantha had seen Meghan, but she had a whole lot to say about it. Now, what do we think about this? Samantha is certainly entitled to her idea of how things have gone. I mean, it's been her experience that Meghan has treated her very poorly. It would be one thing to try to contact your sister, and if you're hurting, contact her and just say, I think maybe you should reach out to Dad. He's embarrassed that these stories are coming out, or whatever you want to say. But maybe personal relationship should come before you're running to the media saying things. And then two, it's like all of the things might be true. But if you have tried to contact Harry first, like if you were really, really, really worried about the royal family, it would stand to reason that they would have people in place to sort of sift through some of these grifters that, attach themselves to the family. I think I would be inclined, if I were Samantha, to just let the process play out and not feel like I needed to come into the media and look bitter. Because I think that truth, though she may be speaking, I don't know that it's always flattered her to come out and say it. Meghan is the sort of person who might be able to play people for a little while, but eventually she's her own worst enemy. And she's going to come out and do and say things that are going to ruin it for her. So there isn't any reason to sully your own good name in an effort to sully someone else's. Their foolishness will hang them. Meghan will be her own demise. Meghan didn't need any help from Samantha to articulate her problems. But I don't know. I think that Samantha's had a hard life. I think that she has watched her sister get everything that she could have possibly wanted, even down to her health. I mean, Samantha has had bad health issues. And so I think that it was a combination of concern that Harry know the truth and jealousy that Meghan had somehow managed to bed down with the elites of society, and she was still stuck in a wheelchair bankrupt, I'm not saying that the things she said weren't true. They probably were. She said a lot of things that are very interesting, but I just wish that she hadn't said them just for her own sake. Because all we have is our own reputation. We can't worry about other people's reputation. We have to just concern ourselves with our own. Also, at first, Tom Jr. contradicted Samantha. He said Meghan didn't turn her back on everybody in the family. She worked very hard to get where she's at. But eventually his attitude altered and he joined on the attack. Meghan telephoned her father and told him that he had better get his older 2 kids in line and they needed to stop attacking her. And Thomas Markle said, I can't. I mean, they're my children too. This is the experience that they've had. They're entitled to speak, just like you would be entitled to speak if somebody interviewed you. So, unfortunately, this is the bed you've made. You have to lie in it. The family war headlines did not make anything better for Meghan. The digital headlines were lurid. I mean, it was all about how Meghan was a gold digger. It was all about the fact that she had photoshopped things at Reitman's to make sure she looked as though she had a smaller waist, bigger breasts. She had had her face worked on. She had there were these super embarrassing clips on Pornhub, a scene from her in suits, suspicious videos of her topless on a yacht, and there was this fabricated topless photo. It wasn't her, but still, it was her face, and so that's embarrassing. So there was a lot of negative stories about her. Now, in Spare, he says that the thing that shocked him was how everybody came out of the gate screaming, "We hate her, we hate her, we hate her," because she is biracial. That is not what Tom Bauer explains here. He does agree that the coverage of her was by and large quite negative, because her background was just sort of dimly lit. It was questionable. There was lots of just sort of grimy details about what she'd been up to and how she had climbed up the ladder as far as she had. And so Tom Bauer does not say that there was, all the press coverage was glowing. It was very questioning of her right to be next to Harry, essentially. And so Harry's definition of it as being super racist and super unkind, it was unkind, but it wasn't necessarily racist. And it was just embarrassing. I mean, ultimately, that's what it was. It was just lots of embarrassing stories that you would hope wouldn't be what people were saying when you finally found your way next to Prince Harry. People just couldn't get over who Harry had decided to align himself with so seriously. They just couldn't get over the fact that Harry was marrying somebody without a titled father, somebody that nobody had ever really heard of, just some 35-year-old nobody from California who'd happened to have a couple of acting gigs and had dressed up in some clothes for reruns. It just sparked lurid reporting. It was just a sort of story that made for lots of titillating stories, lots of juicy gossip. The fact that she had been in Suits and had been, romping around with the men on Suits, lots of ink was wasted describing the sex scenes from Suits, speculating about her divorce, questioning her past. The men in her life were, descended upon by the media. They remained stonily silent. They had nothing to say. And faced with this lack of cooperation, since a lot of people wouldn't talk about Meghan, especially her old boyfriends, this prompted people to rake over any social media posts that she'd ever made, trying to fill in the blanks where they couldn't get people to fill in the blanks for them. All the stories about Michael Del Zotto came back up, the ice hockey guy. I remember in Spare, Harry being particularly worried about that story. And I remember how he talks about how he went to her and asked her, "What is this all about? Who are these boyfriends?" Remember how obsessed Harry was with all this coverage and how he needed to keep going back to her over and over and over. What's this one about? Why were you really with Rory? Why were you with Michael? What's going on? Were you cheating? All this. Well, what is Meghan going to say? Yeah, I was cheating on my boyfriends. I was just trying to climb up the ladder, Wasn't having a great time with Corey or Trevor, so I was, just sowing my wild oats. What is she really going to say? Of course she's going to say no. There was just lots of people who were giddy over the fact that Meghan was finding herself in some hot water. People from her past maybe weren't coming out and speaking publicly, but they were speaking together about Meghan being essentially exposed. When Meghan met Harry, said one anonymous man, I messaged Trevor and said, "He got your leftovers." Hollywood, though, by and large, just stayed silent. Few had even heard of Meghan anyway, and those who had rejected her after auditions refused to speak. All agreed that this was not the right time to make a new enemy. The exception were some of the cast of Suits. They loudly sang her praises. So most of Hollywood wasn't about to out her, but why would they? They're all over there trying to climb up the pole themselves. So they're not going to shoot down somebody that they maybe can, get some ties with, and maybe they'll get invited to that royal wedding. We know that there were indeed some Hollywood actors who reached out to Meghan later on, who never would have spoken to her before, but now that she's got some tie to the royal family, they are looking to get an in with her, So what are they? They're not going to start attacking her now, even if they had heard of her, even if they had been annoyed by her. Hollywood isn't the place to go if you're looking for some negative soundbite. They're all trying to protect themselves and their futures. Now, in this fervored atmosphere, there was that one article that came out that did raise eyebrows and did seem, it did have overtones that were derogatory, racially derogatory. Um, Mail Online, which again was not a British publication, it was an American publication, comes out and says Harry's girl is almost straight out of Compton. Gang scarred home of her mother revealed. So will he be dropping by for tea? And then the article wove together various racial stereotypes, lamenting Doria's gang scarred Los Angeles neighborhood, Crenshaw, and its tatty one-story homes, and listed some crime statistics for the area. So, I mean, that was just like a super tacky story. But again, what are you going to expect from Mail Online? I mean, it was Mail Online. What, are they going to like sit down and write some award-winning piece of journalism? Hardly. Now, after a week of this, just bang, 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 all day long, all night long, you know, it's all anybody was writing about. The Sun felt sympathy for Meghan, and under the headline, "Let's Give Harry's Girl a Chance," the paper urged that the poor girl doesn't stand a chance. She's getting slaughtered from all angles before the relationship gets off the ground. Now, nobody realized that Meghan and Harry had been seeing each other for a little while now, and that Meghan had moved into Harry's home, you know, promptly. I mean, as soon as she was in London, she was making herself comfortable at Knotcott. So this business about, you know, she's getting slaughtered before the relationship gets off the ground, oh, it's firmly established. No one's taking Meghan down. Meghan's going to take Harry down. But no one's going to uproot her. She's firmly planted. Harry believed that he had good reason to fear the media. You remember, he'd always said that his girlfriends had left him because they'd been attacked and provoked. And he feared that this was going to rip Meghan from him. But, I mean, that just shows how little even he knew her at this time. That if he could believe that this media attention, yeah, she hates the fact that it's all negative. But it is media attention. It is getting her name out there. And she believes that she can turn the tide. Jan Moyer, who wrote early on about Meghan and Harry's relationship and was quite prophetic about it, she had pity for the poor girl thrown into the tablets pit. Meghan, she suspected, would surely follow Chelsea Davy and Cressida Bonus and flee for the hills to enjoy happy obscurity and avoid a life sentence in a royal court, corroded by an endless appetite for royal news and skirmishes with bloodless courtiers. Prophetically, Moore warned that if the couple did eventually marry, their relationship would, with a hop and a skip, lead to despair and being stripped of all royal titles and dignity. The good news, that she noted, was that at the Halloween party, Harry showed his maturity by leaving his Nazi uniform at home. So, the fact that she even thought for a second Meghan would run is a compliment to Meghan. A sane person would have gotten out of there. But Meghan had never had any thought in her pretty little head of leaving. Hardly. Unknown to the media and the public, Meghan was staying in Nottingham Cottage. So like I said, she's already been there for a while. And both of them every day would just start the day out with their cup of coffee, combing the newspaper and holding each other, crying over how mean everybody was being. Meghan's over there working herself up into a lather. She's just so mad that any of this has been happening, and she's just so mad that it's not all glowing. Because in her mind, she had never given any thought to the fact that her family's background would play negatively upon her. She's in her mind, she has been such a genius to rise from the ashes to, you know, I was just this little girl eating my $4 Sizzler salads and, you know, working my fingers to the bone at a yogurt shop. And then suddenly here I am with a prince. Why doesn't anybody care about that story? Because that's not really the story that happened. I mean, she may have crawled up the ladder, but through nefarious and questionable means. She just didn't think that anybody would notice those things because she doesn't dwell on those things about her life. She only dwells on how awesome she is to have risen to these heights, to have continually made headway for herself. She thought that was the story, but that's not the story anybody wants. And quite frankly, it's not the true story either. Because yes, she has managed to find herself in the upper echelon, but it was not because she was skillful or talented or had any right to be there. Harry says that he claimed to the BBC, "We were hit so hard at the beginning with a lot of mistruths that I made the choice not to read anything positive or negative. I'm above such things. I'm elevated of mind and of heart and of spirit, and I don't have time for that." Okay. Meghan was more candid. After scrutinizing the websites, she felt sick about the narrative castigating her as a social climber from the ghetto whose goal was to marry up. She says, that was not making sense. I never put any focus on that. So I don't really understand where they're coming with this idea that I was just some kind of social climber, some kind of gold digger. What in my life has ever exhibited those kind of characteristics? The gall, the mistruth, the misinformation. Astounding. And this is the state of our journalism. She insisted that she needed protection from the tabloids, intent on destroying her reputation. What reputation? Meghan ordered her North American publicist to describe her as a bewildered victim of fake news. But no journalist Harry knew would believe that. Fearing that he would lose the girl of his dreams and his future wife, he was distraught. Now, Harry had believed, and probably because he falsely believed that she was more famous than she was, since she always was tattling on about, oh yeah, everyone recognizes me everywhere, it's so hard to get anything done. He believed that she had been set up to be successful in a world full of frenzied media. Now, he had understood why Chelsea and Cressida had not managed, but surely Meghan could hold her own. And he had assumed that Meghan's acting career had prepared her for the inevitable media interest. But what he failed to realize was that though she sought publicity from the tabloids, and though to be mentioned inside any paper, even at the bottom page, was her dream, being played out in the front pages so negatively was not her idea of fame. It wasn't what she wanted, and it wouldn't be what anybody wanted. I mean, I'm not saying how wild of her not to appreciate the fact that her name is being splashed across the pages in negative ways. Nobody would want that. I'm just saying that Harry thought that positive or negative, it wouldn't make a dent in her psyche. He just didn't realize her ego. To Meghan's misfortune, she failed to understand that Hollywood publicity is about favors, mutual agreements, payments, and dishonest journalism. That's something that has really stuck out to me. I mean, being somebody who has absolutely zero attachment to Hollywood, actors, anything, I really didn't understand how this world worked. I didn't even understand how often stories in, say, like Vanity Fair or anything like this are curated by agents as something for their person to do. I have been surprised this whole time by how much arranging happens behind the details so that they can put forth the image that they want. Like, I want this photograph with this person, make sure that this happens. I want my name to be in this publication, call their editor and make sure that my name is here in this publication. I mean, I just didn't realize how much back scratching goes on. I guess I should have. Why would I though? I mean, I didn't know. But Meghan apparently didn't understand that that's not the way media works in general. That you don't just get to tell people what you want said about yourself. Buckingham Palace lacked those levers over Britain's newspapers. Fleet Street's delight was to publish raw reality without Hollywood's cosmetic cover-ups. Moreover, the palace had no influence beyond Britain, especially against the frequently vicious and inaccurate social media. Meghan preferred to suggest that she did not understand those limitations. So it could have been explained to her 1,000 times. She was going to live as a victim to the British press, and particularly and more specifically a victim to Buckingham Palace, who refused to defend her. They had no legal recourse to say anything. There was nothing they could have done. And even though she's used to working with agents who have carefully positioned her so that she always comes out on top wherever she happens to be able to get her name in, that's not the way the real world works. And since she hasn't actually ever been in the public eye, even though she's always loved to run that narrative to herself and everybody else who will buy it, she was unfamiliar with the way paparazzi journalism actually works. So this is, even though she's trying to act like she's a seasoned veteran of this, she's as much of a newbie as any of us would be, because she's only ever experienced a carefully curated version of publicity. So Tom Bauer goes on more and more into this same topic, all about the various negative stories about her. And what becomes very evident is that though there was a ton of stories about her, none of which she could positively refute. all the journalists were raking over her whole life, finding out all these little stories about her, all these little tidbits about her. And because she could not come out and say that never happened, because more often than not it did happen, she decided to make it about something that people could not take away from her. And that was her coming out and saying, these stories are racism. This is all stories of racism. This is all stories of undertones of racism. Maybe you can't tell it because the color of your skin, it makes it so that you can't hear it the way I hear it. Because I am a strong biracial woman, I hear the undertones and the overtones of hateful white supremacy. My ears are tuned to it. So maybe you don't realize it, but it's there. And that's what she fed that line to Harry a ton. You don't realize it because you're so privileged and you're a white male. But I realize it because I hear it the way it was really intended. It was intended for me. So that's why I can hear it and you can't. You know, like it's some kind of, you know, musical tone that only certain ears can pick up. Now, at the same time, she did have people in the media who were supportive of her because of her racial heritage. There were people who, you know, on the internet who rejoiced, you know, secure the palace, sis, and all this. But then I think probably for the first time she actually did experience that whole "you're not black enough" narrative that she had always claimed, that she was in this difficult place in life because she wasn't white enough for the white people and she wasn't black enough for the black people, and she just, you know, was in this purgatory. I don't know if she ever actually experienced that until this point in her life. Somebody did write an article in Vogue and said Meghan Markle is the type of black that the majority of right-leaning white American wishes we all could be, if there were to be blackness at all. Elaine Musiwa particularly identified mixed-race girls' familiarity with whiteness. She said it showed in the way that they held themselves. Having triggered these conflicting emotions, the turmoil alternatively delighted, irritated, and confused Meghan. So she's got people who she claims don't like her because she's mixed race. I've never seen one piece of coverage that said Meghan shouldn't be anywhere near Harry because she's half black. That article does not exist. The worst one was Meghan's almost straight out of Compton, and that was really more derogatory towards her mother, not Meghan. But this bit of journalism where, you know, to me, this is more racist than anything that came out, where, you know, Meghan Markle is the type of black that the majority of right-leaning white American wishes we all could be, if there were to be blackness at all, and being derogatory about Meghan, being like, you know, she is so close to being white, she's had all these privileges. You can just see the way they hold themselves, how they're trying to be whiter than they are. Like, that's racist, you know? But not in the way that Meghan would describe that she had been attacked. The Harry and Meghan relationship really shifted into unknown territory for everybody involved. Nobody had seen this kind of attack happen, and nobody quite knew what to do with it. Also, the relationship was so young. And so people in Harry's camp weren't necessarily sure how they were supposed to deal with it. Some journalists instantly spotted that introducing an uncompromising American into the royal family guaranteed problems. Added to that was Meghan's conviction that she, and only she, could control her image and the media's narrative about her. So already we have a very strong, brash American woman. A feminist, she would call herself, although I think some of us would just call it a bitch. And she wanted her story to go out the way she would have it. If people did not defend her right to tell her own story, then they were, you know, get behind me, Satan, I'm going on ahead, you don't know what you're talking about. Like, she believed that it was up to her to define what people saw about her. Regardless of the fact that nobody else in the royal family has ever had that right, she was going to have it. Those close to Harry believed that he had long harbored a fantasy to be told what to do by a woman. So this was like Harry... This was a dynamic Harry was all about. He liked the fact that she would lead. He didn't want to lead. He had no desire for it. He'd always been told what to do anyway his whole life. So he wasn't like looking to be the strong man of a household. He wanted to hook his star to somebody who could tell him which way to turn, because he was flabbergasted and never knew what was going on. Bamboozled is what he was 24/7. So to have somebody say, this is the way, walk ye in it, he was all about it. I mean, it's not surprising to find that Harry felt that way. I mean, he's been searching for a strong maternal figure his whole life. All of his girlfriends were supposed to be his mom, on top of his lover. And for the first time in Harry's life, he was prepared to obey this woman. Because I wouldn't even say that it was necessarily that he was prepared to, but if he wanted, I mean, I think that he may have gone into the relationship with the idea that they would be on equal footing. But I think that when he got in there, he was willing to abdicate equality with her if it meant that she would support him in however he was feeling that day. To secure Meghan's loyalty, he could change himself to match her expectations if that's what she required. For her part, Meghan knew by then that she had pushed a man eager for revenge against the media and his family. His personal relationships had been damaged by the news of the world's phone hacking. So Harry would change himself for Meghan if that's what needed to happen, to stay with her, to stay in this relationship. And I think that he loved the drama of it as well. I think it made him feel alive. This was something that came up repeatedly when I was reading Spare, was how much I think Harry loves to feel emotionally unstable. Because I think that he doesn't know how to feel at a just regular level. I think he either needs to be really happy or really sad, and but this, he doesn't know what to do with this. And I don't think he knows how to regulate his emotions in any healthy way. And so to be with Meghan, who has huge emotions too, makes him feel like he's met somebody who is his, I guess, emotional equal in some ways, you know, like they can be angry together about what's happening. They can be super joyful together. They can be, you know, I just think that there's no need for him to have this British stiff upper lip with her. They can just be sloppy in their emotions, and she's supportive of that. She's not disdainful of that. In fact, she's quite sloppy with her emotions, as we saw. She was never off the floor. She cried round the clock, constantly throwing herself around, you know, big emotional fits all the time. So for somebody who had always been pretty emotionally immature, this relationship would have been great because it would have asked very little of him as far as restraint goes. Anyway, for her part, Meghan knew by then that she was pushing a man eager for revenge against the media and his family. His personal relationships had been damaged by the news of the world phone hacking, not least when their journalist suddenly appeared during his supposedly secret meetings with Chelsea Davy. Even more pertinently, he blamed Diana's death on the media. Feeling deeply disappointed that he had been unable to protect his mother, he eagerly declared war against his enemy, the newspapers, to protect Meghan. So I suppose the way he saw it was that the media had always gotten in the way of his love. First the love of his mother, and then the love of his girlfriends. And it was an easy thing to be angry about, because what was somebody going to say? Stop being angry? You're not allowed to be angry about this? You know what I'm saying? Like, he could always pull the card of,
they took my mum from me. If it hadn't meant for the media, I'd still have mummy.
And he could say the same about the girlfriends.
I had really meaningful, deep relationships until the media decided to get involved.
So, I mean, he is right to some extent. So what are people going to say? So this was a place where he could, you know, project all his rage and indignation, and nobody could take that away from him. No one could say you're not allowed to be angry about that. Now, we're going to probably, this chapter is so long that I'm going to have to do 2 episodes on it, because I just looked at how many more pages I have left, and oh my goodness, you guys, it's going to be another whole hour, and I just don't have the time to film a whole nother hour. But it should be noted that, and we'll end with this story about Jason Knopf. Jason was a New Zealand-born 35-year-old who was recruited by the palace from the Royal Bank of Scotland. He was Harry's key aide. And unfortunately, he was just very young when he was asked to be put in front of all of this drama. It doesn't mean that he was inadequate. It doesn't mean he was an amateur. It doesn't mean that he wouldn't have been good at his job with any other royal. But Harry and Meghan are not normal royals. Their demands are just astronomically out of proportion with anything anyone would have asked. So to put young and limitedly experienced Jason in the line of fire was, I think, wrong-headed by whoever gave him that role. Following Palace protocol, Jason mastered the standard procedure to stonewall media inquiries about Meghan. There's just not going to be any interviews. We're not going to talk about it. No, I'm not going to brief you in private about what's happening with her, and there's not going to be any comment on the controversy. Thank you very much. See you tomorrow. But that wasn't good enough for Meghan. I mean, she wanted somebody to come out swinging on her behalf. And because they wouldn't do this, Meghan complained that Jason and his staff were amateurs, learning on the job and flip-flopping. That was what she said, literally verbatim. They're just amateurs. They're just over there learning on the job. They've got no idea what they're doing. They're flip-flopping all over the place. He was following the traditional dictum that royals don't complain and don't explain, but that wasn't something Meghan was here to support. I mean, yeah, that's fine for everybody else, but not for me, okay? Because since my background is different, you actually do need to explain, and I actually do need to complain, so. Jason's main role was not to run out and, run defense for Meghan. His role was to advise and protect Harry from pitfalls and from himself. That's what he was supposed to do. He was supposed to advise him on how to conduct himself and how to act in the media and how you were going to be portrayed by the media, and to avoid those sorts of situations that would incur negative attention. But unfortunately, the publicist truly did fall at the first hurdle. But again, we're asking a talented high school athlete to go run in the Olympics. Like, it's probably not going to go well. Even though this person is talented at what they do, you're asking them to take on a job that is beyond their capacity, simply because they're young. He was 34 years old. And I just can't imagine anybody being able to stand up against the monstrous two-headed dog that is Meghan Markle's personality. Anxious to please, Jason lacked both the authority and the experience to reason with Harry, and the British media had never uncritically venerated royals. So it wasn't something like he'd been told not to do a certain thing that Harry wanted him to do. But he also wanted to please Harry. He wanted to do a good job at this role that he had, and so he just was sort of up against it, very much between a rock and a hard place. But I think that Jason's real problem was that he wasn't quick enough on his own defense. He was good at advising Harry on how to defend himself and how to conduct himself, and he knew the things he was supposed to say to Harry. He didn't know the things he should say to himself. So when Harry and Meghan came firing at him, he had no means of protection. He did not have his shield up. He was not ready for that. Jason's natural course would have been to remind Harry that Charles had suffered considerably more humiliation than Meghan ever had. From Diana, the Tampax tape, spitting image on television, a series of books, especially by Paul Burrell, Diana's valet. Camilla had also been mercilessly ridiculed. Jason should have reminded Harry that this is par for the course. This just happens. Now, Harry would have combated that with, I don't plan on suffering like my mother did. Okay. And he would have raged, and he would have, basically spit in Jason's eye over the whole thing. But in reply to Harry's anger that he would not tolerate suffering like his mother, Jason failed to reply that his mother's strength and appeal was her ability to mock herself. Diana was very self-deprecating. She understood that in order to gain approval, she had to not be so self-righteous all the time. She had to not be so sensitive all the time. People had to know that she could take it. So that when she did want to present a more sensitive side, people would be willing to take that as well. To persuade Harry to dampen his anger and swerve away from confrontation with the media required the sophistication of age and wisdom that Jason unfortunately just didn't have. And it's not his fault. It's just that he had never come up against somebody like Harry, and he had never been trying to thread this very small needle. Unable to summon the support of Charles and the Queen, Jason eventually did succumb to Harry's demands that some kind of statement be issued to the papers. In order to pacify Meghan's anger, Jason agreed to issue a statement on Harry's behalf, damning the media for their description of Meghan. Harry dictated the sentiments to Jason to fashion into a statement, committing Jason to a conundrum because Meghan demanded that the statement should reflect the parallel between her position and Diana's. What the hell kind of a demand is that? How self-aggrandizing. Jason suggested that the overdramatization of Meghan's distress would backfire, but Harry was adamant. If Meghan wanted it, and if this was her wish, to be equated with Diana, and if that was not satisfied, then Harry would probably lose her, and Jason would be at fault for that. So just say what has to be said. And to reinforce his attack, Harry asked William for support, but his brother hesitated. I don't know about that. Attacking the media was perilous. Harry, he also feared, was committing himself too quickly to Meghan. She was, after all, still just a girlfriend. They'd only been together 5 months. 5 months, you guys. January, February, March, April, May. That's this year. That's what we've done, okay? That is wild to me that Harry is expecting the whole family to rally for his cause for a girl he's literally known for 5 months. Get out of here with this. To William's regret, Harry was obeying Meghan's orders, and he felt that this was just completely unwise, and that Harry needed to just calm down and get his girlfriend to calm down too. But Harry was adamant. It had to happen. It had to happen, and it was a shame on anybody who wouldn't back him. Despite his unease, William capitulated. The Duke of Cambridge, read the draft statement, absolutely understands the situation concerning privacy and supports the need for Prince Harry to support those closest to him. The final statement was issued by Harry on the 8th of November, 5 months after meeting Meghan. And the media was denounced for orchestrating a wave of abuse and harassment, for their outright sexism and racism towards Meghan, and the bombardment of nearly every friend, coworker, and loved one in her life. Harry complained about the smear on the front page of a national newspaper, the racial undertones of comment pieces, and the outright sexism and racism of social media trolls and the web article comments. The statement continued. To those who would reply that this was the price she has to pay, and this is all part of the game, Harry strongly disagrees. This is not a game, it is her life and his, and it should stop before any further damage is done, of the statement. But, not surprisingly, the media and much of the British public was bemused. Get over yourself. Neither Harry nor Meghan were young innocents. Since 2011, Meghan had exposed herself to the media. Journalists mockingly pointed out that those who lived by Instagram risked dying by Instagram. Similarly, Harry had flaunted his international partying. Despite public warmth towards him, he was undoubtedly privileged, pocketing millions of pounds of public money every year and enjoying spectacular homes and comforts. He could not expect the benefits of royalty and simultaneously the privacy of normal people. Harry also experienced an unusual blowback. Newspapers commented for the first time that the couple had played the race card. Reporting of Meghan and her past was being interpreted by them as racism. So we're gonna have to stop there. I'm gonna have to do another episode doing like the second part of this chapter. But what I think is very interesting is Meghan says talking about a race is racist. But why would talking about your race be racist? If people just are talking about the fact that you are biracial and that the family, could use some more diversity in the family, if you think that that's racist, you're racist against your own race. Why would you think that it's a negative thing for somebody to point out, thank God we're getting some new blood up in this place? That's not negative. That's a compliment. But she is so sensitive about the fact that she is biracial that she interprets anything to do with her race as being some kind of slam or slight against her. Why would it be? Is that how you see it, Meghan? Do you see your race as being something to be ashamed or embarrassed of? We've seen her do this before. When she did that article about, I'm coming out as biracial. And it's like, okay, but that's not something you need to reveal as though, I was so nervous to tell you guys that my mom is black. Why are you nervous about that? Is that something that you should be like, hide the kids, oh my gosh, I'm about to say something wild, crazy. Meghan's crazy. All right, well, another episode coming shortly about this one. I'm devastated that I'm having to break up one chapter. I want to get done with this. I must get to work, must go make breakfast, but I will say that I will try to get this second part recorded tomorrow morning so that we can just get on with this chapter. Thank you all so much, and I will see you again later this weekend. Bye.